what we can then do is relocate the user. So we're relocating the user to index.php, and then we're exiting the script. Probably not necessary in this case, but I always like to include it anyway. So let's go ahead. This should work correctly now and should actually log our user in. Let's go ahead and log in properly. So I'm typing my email address in and my password. Click login, and you can see that we get this hello confirmation message or welcome message, and we have the option to log out, just like we did when we registered the user. Okay, so now that we've successfully logged in, we need to take into account the fact we might need to display user data to the user. Now this isn't just here, you might want to display the user's email address, and if you had other fields such as date of birth, etc., you might also want to display these, depending on how many fields you have in your table. So we've got one function left to create inside user.func.php, and this is the user data function. Now I explained a few videos back that this is actually a function that returns or takes in an unlimited amount of parameters. So you can give, say, 5 parameters for 5 different fields you want to return the data for, or just 1. And in the case of our welcome page, we just want to return the user's first name. So we need to find a way to be able to take in an unlimited amount of parameters, but by not defining them in here. So we leave this blank here. However, we can use the funcGetArgs function, which will actually get the arguments that have been passed into this function. So quite a good way to actually operate, because it means that we can call the function once and we don't have to keep calling it with single parameters. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is create a user data variable, and this is going to be equal to an array. In actual fact, we can go a completely different way and make it a lot easier. Let's go ahead and create a variable called args, and that's going to be funcGetArgs. Okay, so this is the function in PHP that returns the arguments that have been passed to the current function. So let's go ahead and just return this data and test this out. So let's come into index.php. In fact, no, sorry, login.php. And let's go up to the part where we greet the user. Now if I was to say print r, and let's put user data, this is our function, remember, and choose 3 fields, for example, pass 3 parameters to this function. I could just say, let's just say name, email, we'll just do 2. So if we print this, this is going to return a funcGetArgs, which is essentially an array. So if we come back into our browser and press refresh, you can see that the array now contains name and email. We've passed name and email, and just by using the funcGetArgs function, we've just returned just some parameters we've passed to this function. So now that you can see the array and how it works, we can actually go ahead and process these parameters that have been passed to the function. So I'm going to create a new variable, and that's called fields, and this is going to be the fields that are going to need to be selected. Now we're going to use implode, and this is a function in PHP that actually joins together elements of an array, so we can come up with the part of our query that we need to perform, essentially, because we need to select a specific amount of fields from our users table. So we give it 2 arguments, I guess, or parameters. This one is args, so the array that we've generated here, and then also we need to say a sort of like a slanted semicolon, I'm not sure what you'd call it, and then a comma, and then another one of them. And then at the end of this we append more of these slanted semicolons. Not sure of the technical name. Okay, so now what this is going to do is, the amount of arguments we pass, it's going to construct part of our query. So if we go ahead and just echo out this and go over to login, we can actually pop that back in there. And in fact, no, let's just say echo that. So we're echoing out the fact that we've passed in name and email, and this is going to construct part of our query. So we've returned that. And when we refresh, you can see it's got just name in sort of like slanted inverted commas, or whatever you want to call them, then a comma, and then email in them slanted inverted commas. So we've formed part of our query that we can then perform on the database. We can then return an array of the data we get. So let's leave that as it is, and let's go ahead and just remove that from there. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to actually perform the query. So I'll create a new variable called query, and that's MySQL query. Now inside here we want to say select, and here we want to select the fields. So all we need to do is substitute that with the fields variable, and you saw the output from this, so that slots perfectly into our query. Now we want to select that from the users table, and we want to select where user ID is equal to, and we want to select it where the user's ID is equal to the current session. So all we can do is just append on $_session user ID. So this is the current user logged in. We're retrieving the fields that we've passed to this function from the users table, where the user ID is equal to the current user that's logged in. And that way, when we log in as someone else, it will take the unique ID and it will select the name that corresponds to that user ID. So now what we want to do is say query result, and that's equal to MySQL fetch assoc, and that fetches an associative array of the results from the query. What we can then do is say for each and create that block, and then what we're going to do is say for each args as field. So remember, args is the array of data we've passed to here, so we're saying for each args as field, we want to then select the data from the result of this query, essentially. So what we say is args, and then in square brackets, remember args is actually still an array, so we say args field, and what we're doing here is giving the arguments and a name. We're basically creating them as an associative array. As you'll see, normally an array will automatically generate keys which start from 0 and then increment onwards, but we actually want the field name, which is here, to be inside this args array. So we'll do a print R on this, and you can see how the data is returned, just in case you're a bit confused. So this is equal to query result. Remember, we grabbed the result just here, and that's an associative array of the results, and then in here is just field. Okay, so now what we can do is underneath here is return args. Okay, so inside login, let's go ahead and say print R, and we want to say print R, and again user data, and we'll select two fields. We'll select the name and the email. So now when we refresh, you can see that it's selected okay, yeah, so we have I guess more keys than we actually want, but this isn't really a problem. We've got 0 equal to name, 1 equal to email, but then we've got this part of the array, we've named this index name, and that's equal to Alex, and this index is email, and it's equal to my email address. So we've successfully returned an array of the results that we've passed, or the arguments that we've passed through to this function. If we were to just pass name, for example, and refresh, it just gives us the name here. Okay, so now that we've done that, we can use this user data function to actually return the name of the user that's currently logged in. Now you might be asking, why are we going this long way round to do this when we could just perform a single query? And the reason being is later on we might want to display the user's email address, the name, and other data. So what we can do is we can assign this user data to a variable. So I could say user data, and that's equal to the function name. Let's just get rid of that extra bracket. Now what we can do is we can say hello, a space, a comma, because we're appending something on, and we can say user data name. Okay. Now if we wanted to also show the email address, all we'd want to do, well, I'll show you how it works first and then we'll explain that. So now it says hello Alex. Let's just give, we can append something on in a moment. So hello Alex, this is almost done the job that we want it to do. Now what happens if we want to also display the email address? We can simply add in email, and then we could go ahead and append on user data, remember referencing the same function because it's returned both results, email, and now that will display my name and my email address. So this is useful because in other applications you don't want to keep calling the same function over and over again, but you can actually give an unlimited amount of fields and then just display them using the same variable. So hopefully that makes sense, and now that we've displayed the name, we are pretty much done with the login system. The only thing we probably want to do now is change the fact that this image is displayed here, this landing page image is displayed when the user's logged in. So let's go ahead and open index.php, and down here we can start to say if logged in, say something, otherwise say something else, and that something else is this landing page image. If the user is logged in, we might want to say, you know, welcome to your account. You may want to start creating albums and uploading images. So we can say welcome and comma, and then say you can now start. Let's just create a link. And create another link. So the first one's just going to be create albums. So welcome, you can now start to create albums and upload images, and we can link this in here, so we can say create album.php, that's work to be done still, and upload image.php. So now the user's logged in, they're going to get a message like welcome as opposed to the original landing image. So when we refresh, we have this message here. When we log out, it logs the user back to the original state, and then we can go ahead and actually log back in like that. So now that we've done the registration system and the login system, we can start to create the createalbums.php file, and this is going to allow the user to create albums and actually then insert this data into the database. We'll then go on to the image upload process where we can actually upload image to specific albums.